Hey YouTube, I'm here for Grant Lewis. Grant, this is my DX18. Your DX8 is going to be a little bit different. Go to System Setup, select the correct model. In our case, we're dealing with the Arcus M, 2222 millimeters. Back out to the main screen. Alright, what you're going to see first of all is I have the little picture selected. That doesn't do anything, just so you know. And here's my plane. This is how I store my planes, Grant. So you can see the Arcus is up here. It's kind of huge, so it's a weird one to store. So what I'll do is I'll get that down and I'll show you how it wired, because it does make a difference how you wire it, the configuration that I'm going to tell you how to do. So why don't I pause it and I'll get that thing down. Alright, Grant, what we're looking at here inside the canopy, I've got this little battery holder that's for a 2200 milliamp, and I don't like Velcro. I'd rather have a pressure fit. And I have this small battery that I'm going to use for testing today. It doesn't really matter, but it's a 3S 1300 milliamp. This is my receiver. It's a Lemon RX 7 channel with stabilization. Channel 5 is used, the gear channel is used to control on and off of stabilization, and then channel 8 or auxiliary 3 is used for controlling the gain, the master gain, even though there are 3 little trim pots, and so I've adjusted those pretty much all to the max settings for now. And anyway, you guys know all the other mods we've done, but for Grant's purposes, I need to also explain that my gear servo was dead initially. I've also replaced both servos with metal gear servos. I just happened to use a different control arm on this one. I'm not sure why I did that. But these are 9-gram metal gear servos. I think they actually call them like 13-gram, but they're a 9-gram size, made by Turnigy. This one is a Hextronics standard plastic gear, and I blew it out immediately on the landing gear, but I made this pin that can be pulled up, and then you can move the position to the back spot, and that puts the gear down. So your gear either fixed up or fixed down, but I don't have to use a channel for it either. So that being understood, you can see that all the plugs are used up, and that's because I have everything plugged in. I have the retractable motor, boom, hooked up. That's a servo, okay, to one channel. I have the electronic speed control hooked up to a second channel, okay? Not in any particular order. I have the ailerons hooked to one channel shared. I have the spoilers hooked to one channel shared. I have the elevator hooked to one channel shared, just alone. And then I have the rudder hooked up to one channel. And then, of course, I have the on-off, and then I have the gain on auxiliary 3. So the master gains you may not have to worry about. So you've got the radio on, and basically what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you how this works first, so that you can decide if you want to try to copy everything or if you want to supplement what I'm doing. And normally I don't do special videos like this, Grant, but in your case, I know you've been trying really hard to get this set up, so I want to try to help you out if I can. Some of the stuff is kind of complicated, so if you're not used to it, don't worry, you'll get there. It takes time. So this is the initiation sequence for the auto leveling on this receiver. If you're not using this receiver, you don't have to worry about that. But you see how those stopped flashing and it went over to this? That is changed by this switch. Boom, boom. See the colors change? That's auto leveling, that's stabilization, and that's off. Okay? So stabilization and auto leveling, stabilization and off. Off, stabilization only, auto leveling. Okay? So auto leveling, theoretically, will level this plane. And you can tell because it's always going to move the control surfaces to right the airplane. Okay? I don't trust it. It doesn't work that great. It's a little bit too slow in response. So I don't use it. Not a big deal. I don't really use safe on this except for once in a blue moon. I don't use safe on the Timber except for once in a blue moon. I don't use safe on the Spitfire except on a blue moon. What else has safe? Nope, that's all of them. So I have little planes upstairs I have safe too, but safe actually works. This auto leveling doesn't really work per se. So if you happen to have a choice between this Lemon RX and a Lemon RX that has this is called Stabilization Plus, as opposed to just stabilization with dual diversity antenna DSMX, 7-channel, just go for the regular one. I wouldn't get the plus. I don't think the plus really adds anything. It's just more complexity, and then when you first turn it on, you have to wait for that period. Plus then you've got a 3-position switch you have to assign for the on-off characteristics rather than just a 2-position. And normally I just do a 2-position. Like this is stabilization, this would be off, and this would be off. But in normal conditions, so because I'm using the plus, I have 3 positions. So, all right, getting back to the point, you want to know about the RMS. First of all, throttle cut's on. If you don't know how to set up a throttle cut, that's very important. Start doing it every time. You're going to scroll down to throttle cut. See how it says -100? In this plane, you want it to be -100. It's going to default to -130. That means that the servo position is 100 or 100, right? -130 would go beyond, okay? That, I believe, is for when you're using like gas motors and stuff, where you have like an idle speed that you want to keep it to a certain setting, and then until you turn off your throttle cut, you wouldn't even be able to start the thing. So I don't know the rationale behind going that below. But I always have to scroll that back up. So you'll just click and scroll it back up to what you want, and then done, okay? And I set it to the switch H, so you'll highlight the switch, and then you'll just toggle the switch, and it will actually set it to that switch. Okay, once you've done that, go over to monitor mode, and you'll see the throttle stick. See? There's no throttle. You're probably thinking, why does that move? Why does that move, Brian? Well, that moves because it's also tied to the throttle stick. So basically, see how it goes to almost 100% position there, but then it doesn't change any, okay? Well, that's because I mixed it. So now watch with throttle cut off. This is not a super strong, powerful source, so we can do this. I'm probably going to move this out of the way, though. I love the canopy on this plane. It's delicate, like most of them. Okay, so it comes up. Notice there's no throttle. And just as it starts letting go, the throttle goes up. See? Nice closure. Listen for the hum. There isn't any, okay? Now, what's going on there is I've got this little crappy pack that's probably not charged properly. My grandpa has lipos that don't get used very often because when I fly his planes, it's just, you know, few and far between, and so they kind of go bad. So don't even worry about that. It's just, if it's spinning, it's spinning. Trust me, the full throttle works. And you can see right here, I'm going to throw my throttle cut on again. When you get to the top, that's when it releases your, that's when it would release your prop, okay? So watch what happens. The black is touching, now it's not all the way. Now it's engaging, now it's not. Now it's engaging. It's just these are just hitting, okay? So it's very simple. I lost that screw right there, the one that you can see, not the one that's on our side. I lost that screw. It popped out about halfway. And so this thing got stuck. I can't remember if it was stuck in a weird position or what, but it was a little disconcerting. Fixed it, not too bad of an ordeal. But what you're going to want to do is, periodically when you're flying, you're going to need to check this in your pre-flight. There are screws that hold the sides on, here, and then up here, and then down the length, and you can separate this, but you got to undo these too. Okay, once they're done, nope, you just undo the side one, sorry. That folds open, and then you can fix that, because otherwise, how are you going to get a screwdriver in there? Alright, so also when this is in the full up position, it's really hard to find home position because the magnet position's on the actual brushless. So what you want to do is reduce your stroke back until it's like this, and then you can bring it to the home position. It'll click in. Okay, so now you also notice that it looks like there was at one point another finger that would hold the backside of the prop. My second finger is gone. Okay, I just noticed that. It doesn't really matter because this thing's always going to get forced in this direction. It's always going to get forced counterclockwise. Okay, so as I retract, it would click and hold tight in that position so that it can't go this way. Well, let me tell you, it's never going to go that way. It's going to go that way, believe me. And what's going to happen is it'll be going that way fast enough that it doesn't stop, and then the air doesn't quite get it around. Okay, that's that. Now that you have the 10,000 foot view of what we're talking about, I I want to show you the control surfaces, all work, elevator, rudder. Look how huge my rudder is. You need a big rudder on this plane. It doesn't come with a big rudder. You need a big elevator. I've extended that to double its size. And then I've reinforced it a bunch so that it doesn't break out. And then same thing here, I've reinforced all these. And then also on the bottom, well, look at this first. See how stiff that is? I'm pushing hard, okay? That stuff is very strong. It looks like a cast. It's epoxy and CD-ROM dividers, okay? Watch the videos if you want to see how to do that. And then on the bottom, I have a ribbon that runs all the way down, and that's covered in epoxy. If you do that, don't do it as thick as I did it. I use this ribbon here, okay? This ribbon is some stuff that my wife had sitting around, and here's the dimensions of it. Get something that's half as thick. So that one is, what, 7/8 of an inch thick, width-rise. So you want to get something that's thinner, or even just a string. But you can use a lot less epoxy. Oh, and then of course my flat mode switch operates the spoilers. Okay, so very simple setup. If I wanted to get this thing to have even more crazy roll characteristics, I could tie these and occupy 2 channels so that they would work with the ailerons, have it so that it's switched on and off. But knowing from what the Bird of Time does, the Bird of Time also has spoilerons that act as the ailerons, and it loses a lot of lift when you deploy them. Alright, so getting back to settings, guys. I want you to just take a look at this. So basically, as I verify my throttle cuts on, when I move the stick, you can see that I'm at -115, and I'm at 125, but watch. It doesn't start dropping until there. See? So basically, what I did to do that, and everything else, you're going to have to do a bunch of servo setup. Like I have some of these turned up higher so that I have more deflection. Like on the rudder, the elevator, the ailerons. Auxiliary 2. Auxiliary 3 is my intensity of my gain on the stabilizer. So the stabilizer's on. There's your intensity. I'm going to try to wiggle it while I'm holding the phone. So here, we'll just do this. That's full. That's all the way down. Here's just a little. Here's a little more. There's full out. Okay, so you can see that's all controlled by this knob. And you can see how that changes when I change the position of the slider, or well, in this case it's a right knob is what that's called. And then this would be like the left slider and the right slider. I don't use those. I don't know if you have those on a DX8. I don't think you do. So that being said, D, that controls the gear, okay? But the gear aren't hooked up, and the gear have nothing to do with it. It's just the channel that we picked. That particular pick controls our stabilization on or off, or auto leveling, okay? So what we need to do now is we need to go to, we have a bunch of differential and expo in here. So you can see it's tied to switch F, which is here. See how 0 is 10, then 15, then 20? But I also reduce the amount of the rates. And some people are going to complain about this, and I don't really care. This is a personal preference item. Okay, elevator. The idea is I want, on the fly, I want to be able to flip one switch and make this plane more docile or less docile, okay? Some people say, oh, why don't you use 3 switches? Well, I don't want to waste 3 switches on something that I'm always going to do all 3 at the same time anyway. Okay, rudder. See how it's just like incremental? It goes from 10 to 20 to 30. So that's the lowest amount of expo, the median amount of expo, which I usually fly in the middle. And then the maximum that I've set up also reduces the amount of output, okay? So if you don't know how to use expo, learn to use it. It is very helpful. It will make flying more enjoyable, and you can really tame a crappy flying plane with expo, okay? So back. Throttle cut we already talked about. Throttle curve we do use on this, okay? Okay, throttle curve is a pain. The reason we use throttle curve is because, watch this, as I move the stick, you see that thing sliding over? It's telling you the chart points. So normally, when you move this, it'd be linear. It would start at 0 and it would go straight to 100. Well, we need the throttle to not execute until the thing is up. And we only want one. See, you don't want any throttle until you get to there. Okay? So look at that. Throttle curve starts at 13. Then it goes to 20. Then it goes to 48. Then it goes to 50. If you want, just pause your video and copy these settings. Just do it in yours. Do not do it with the plane hooked up. You'll chop your fingers off or something. Just, you know, keep the battery unplugged, set it up, and then test. You're going to have to refine these values, okay? So in order to turn that on, you have to click. It'll say like inhibit, and then you'll just click, and then you'll roll it to throttle curve, okay? You see how that's set up? It switches on. You don't need to have this on a switch. You just leave it on all the time because it's just a mix you want to always work, okay? Now, I want to show you one other thing about the throttle curve. At one point, I had speed at 0.2 on the way down, okay? That refers to auxiliary 2. Now, what's auxiliary 2 for us? Auxiliary 2 is our RMS. So it goes faster up than it goes down. Because obviously, if you're demanding throttle, I want it now, or you're going to crash, right? But on the way back, we want it to catch the prop before it hits. I've toyed with this between 1 second. Here, let me just show you what happens if I turn it up. Okay, so I click it and I just scroll it up. So let's say it's 10 seconds, right? On the way up, it's fast. On the way down, it's going to take 10 seconds. 10 seconds from the initiation of the input to the closure. That would be ridiculous. You don't need it to take that long. It will not work well because this thing will not catch every time. You're going to have to up and down a little bit, okay? So I'm going to take 10 seconds and I'm going to scroll that back down. I'm going to scroll back down to 0.3. I mean, that's what it was. You can see it's almost not negligible, the difference. But that's very important. Okay, so now, scrolling back down to mixing. Okay, so you see rudder, aileron, elevator. I don't do that. That's for coordinated turns. Aileron and rudder. I do a 25% mix when this is happening. Okay, some of my more complicated planes, I have 3 or 4 mixes so that when I deploy spoilers or I have flaperons working, then I need the rudder to pick up the slack where the ailerons are no longer capable of doing it. So that's really helpful for me. I'm going to go back. Elevator flap, I don't use in this application. Then I just have mixes. You see the mixes, there's not a lot of them. Looks like throttle is mixed to auxiliary 2. That's where we tie the stick, which controls the RMS, when the throttle cuts off, to the throttle, okay? So you can see here, it starts, and then it mixes as soon as you get, you see I did negative 100, then 100, 100, 100, 100. And it's on, switch position is on, meaning it's always on. You see the stick? You see how it moves? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. See how it says add point? So what you can do is you can actually keep adding points or you can remove points. Okay? But you got to move the stick. You got to actuate the control surface that your mix is tied to. Okay? Now this is called a curve, not just a regular. So like when you start and you make a new mix, this is inhibit to inhibit, so it's new. You'd click and it would say normal or curve. Well, you'll go to curve to get that weird one. Okay? So you're going to have to go in there and add points. Okay? So the way you do it is you tie it to, so throttle to auxiliary 2. It's auxiliary 2. You don't want expo on. And then you'll just say like negative 100. And it's hokey in this menu structure because it doesn't update super fast. Okay? And then basically you'll just, hold on, I'm going to inhibit this. That way it doesn't break anything because I can hear it's trying to walk everything over. And then you're going to set this to 100. see how it doesn't update very fast? Then I want to show you a strange phenomenon too. Okay, so you set that to 100, then you set this to 100. Because this is kind of weird. If you're new to this system, you won't know how to do this. It took me a while to figure this out. And this one's kind of a weird setup. Okay. So basically, as you move your stick, you can see what's happening. Now the other thing is, you see how it's all way over here? Well, that's because you can change the positions. And you have to highlight that. See that? It says throttle stick. So there's throttle stick. Now what you can do is, as you move the stick, you can go in and delete these points and then make new ones. See this? So I've got that highlighted. And it's referencing to the full position. So then you can delete it. And you're just going to basically have to spend some time playing with this. This is an awkward setup. Okay, whoops. So, sorry, just a second, I gotta pause it. So I put that back to inhibit, in my case, because obviously, and this is how you clear out a mix if you're not going to use it. You just inhibit, and then you go back and it'll delete it. Okay, see how it's gone, guys? It was a mix 4. Alright, so we know how to do this already. Now I want to go to this A to gear. Okay, so what that was doing is that's setting up switch A to operate the gear. You'll notice it's inhibited. We're not using that anymore. I was tying the gear to the same controls as my on-off on my gyro. That we don't need to worry about. And then throttle to elevator. With throttle, I give some output to the elevator. And what that does is, under heavy load, the plane will either balloon or push down. That's what this corrects. Now, you know mine is -10, yours might be +10. What you're going to want to do is just copy what you see and then play with it. And just be really careful the first time you fly it. Don't get too aggressive on any of the controls. Make sure you just glide it first. Don't use any throttle until you've got all the control surfaces going the right way. You'll just go up there, you'll just give it a nice little toss, and it's going to go about 20 feet or 30 feet in front of you. Not off a mountain, just in the grassy knoll. Nice flat area. Preferably not a high wind area. But that's what you're going to do. And I say simple as that, but it's not really simple, I realize. Okay, so one other thing, you got to go to system setup, yes. And then, you know, the model type I'm using is just airplane. If you reset that after you do any settings, it's going to clear everything. Model name, type it in like you expect to. Aircraft type, I'm using one aileron and one flap, meaning one servo is attached. One channel is being consumed for the ailerons, and one servo or one channel is being consumed for the spoilers. Even though there's 2 servos, they're hooked up on a Y, so you only consume one channel. And that's how this system knows how to operate, okay? And then basically, the tail is normal, so that's pretty simple. Then you can do flight mode setup and set up all sorts of crap on this. I didn't do it. Channel assigned, this is pretty important. You see how everything is assigned as it were. The only difference is auxiliary 1 is flaps. Now auxiliary 2 and 3, in my case, are what they need to be, because I just call out auxiliary 2 when I want to make changes to the RMS servo. Now you could call that something else and then you could change the assignment, okay? Now if you scroll to next, you can see I've then assigned gear to D. D is the gear switch, which controls our little flashy lights and the settings of the stabilizer. Okay, and then auxiliary 3 we've assigned to the right knob, which is up here. Okay, so that's something you probably don't have to do if you're using a standard receiver. But that's how that works, guys. It's complicated. It wasn't easy to set this one up because there was a lot of guesswork involved at the beginning. But it's a really cool plane. It's striking, although I gotta say, the Bird of Time, it's a lot funner to fly. It's a better plane in general. This plane, as with other gliders, it has its moments where it's awesome, and then other moments where it's not. One thing I wish about this plane, which is kind of funny because it's so cool with the retractable motor, and look at that beautiful sleek nose. I wish this plane was a little bit better glide ratio because I feel like it's just kind of a heavy turd right now. But look how stiff my wings are now. If you did that with yours, they'd probably fold in half. And it's got a little bit of wiggle though. And then my tail boom, I had to reinforce the tail boom. I even had to go so far as to ram a rod up vertically. I've got stuff taped in here. Just tons of stuff to make this tail boom stiff. But look how skinny this is compared to the ASW 28, which is dead, I realize. Look at this. We got the tail boom on here. And look how much thicker this is. They're almost the same size plane. And look how much more beefy the ASW is. The ASW 28, which by the way looks beautiful flying. But it's a lot more robust. There's more plastic, there's more styrofoam. But look how beautiful that is. Now, I'll take thick and operational over thin and beautiful pretty much any day. But at the same time, you know, you got to remember the ASW 28, it's actually cheaper than this plane. Yeah, I don't know if you guys ever seen the Hall of Shame over here. This is where I put planes after they're dead. So we try not to hang out there. There's lots of ghosts. Anyway, Arcus M setup. Grant Lewis, I hope this answers your questions. You're going to have to do a lot of pausing. I realize that. Sorry. This is probably about the most help you're going to get. And no, I'm not going to type this out. And no, I'm not going to send any diagrams. This is what you get. You'll be able to do it from that. The other thing is, keep in mind, this is a Gen 1. Yours is a Gen 2. There's going to be some minor differences. If you don't know how to use your setup features in your DX8, learn to use them. Take your time. Make sure that the control surfaces go the right direction. Make sure that the motor's not going to get jammed. Make sure that the settings that I've set, like this, you see that? How auxiliary 2 is 125 compared to 135. I fiddled with that forever to get this to go to the right position so that it wasn't buzzing. And you're going to have to do the same thing. I guarantee you that's not going to be exactly the same on yours. Same thing with throttle. So just be careful, don't cut your fingers off. Use throttle cut. Throttle cut's good. But above all, don't forget to like and subscribe.